Welcome to this week's episode of As It Relates to Podcasting. I am Simona, and today I have an incredible guest. Actually, for the next 3 episodes, have an absolutely amazing guest. Her name is Kendall, and she works with Riverside FM as the community manager there. So really excited to have you here today, Kendall. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode and for the next 3, I guess.
Of course, it's a marathon. I'm excited about it.
I know we're about to sprint, and I have to say, we have had so many tech issues, and I'm just going to have to say this to my listeners because I feel like people get so worried and tripped up and anxious and all of the things about having tech issues. And for me, it happens every single time. And I don't know if it only happens because I continue to say that and I'm like manifesting that into my reality, but, but that's not here nor there.
We're putting it into the world. I mean, what came first, chicken or the egg type of thing, you know?
Probably, absolutely, exactly. Anyways, we're here now, and I'm really excited to have you here today. In today's episode, I know you're going to be sharing a lot of fun new things that are coming down the line for Riverside FM, but we're going to be talking specifically about recording tech and your setup, and then all of the really cool Riverside FM features like the editing, show notes, content creation features, and all of the above. So I think first to start us off, Kendall, can you tell us what you love so much about Riverside FM first versus some of the other platforms, other than the fact that, you work there, but
Other than the fact that I work there.
yeah.
Well, I would say that, I mean, just in general about Riverside is what I love about it most is that it really kind of democratizes the podcasting process. And by that, I
Mm,
mean that you don't need a studio, you don't need the fanciest of equipment. Like, you're able to record like professional level content without needing all of that. And when you do
mm,
that, that opens up more conversations, more stories told by more people. We're putting less blockers in the way for people to be able to get on a mic or even, I mean, your computer mic if you really want to go there, and then are able to share more stories. And when we share more stories, you're able to understand more people and be able to have better conversations. So that's
mm.
kind of what I love about Riverside as a whole and as like a product. But I would also say that what I think is really amazing about Riverside is that you can record there, edit there, publish it, and we make it as easy as possible for people to create content. But when
Mm.
I say as easy as possible, I think that people are often like, okay, if it's easy, then how great can it be? But the real key here is that it's easy and pro level, which I think is just a really great sweet spot.
I love that. And it's actually my personal recording platform of choice. And it's what I recommend to all of my clients to record on as well. So obviously, like we're a production agency. Some of our clients will do full production, content creation, management, like the whole 9 yards with us. But then some people just want, some consulting, some strategy and all of that. And so it's helpful because if people want to go in and create their own content, so let's say we're doing the editing for it, we'll take it back in our agency, we'll do the editing for it, but then they will go and create their own content. They might want to write their own show notes and so on. It's
Mhm.
helpful because they have that at their fingertips and it's not adding hours and hours of work to their workflow, which is really nice. It's a good user
Exactly.
experience.
Exactly. And I also think, I mean, for some audio editors, they have their own systems that they like to
Mhm.
use. And I like even people who are doing their audio editing in other systems are choosing Riverside because they're able to get the highest quality audio and video from it. So
Ooh,
they can
that is so
either
true.
start and stop there. Yeah, you can either start and stop there. Or with the editor, I mean, we have webinars that come out every few weeks, and I don't have to send my video to the video editor to create it. I mean, I could, but I can also just edit my own video, create social posts myself. And so you're able to get more things out there and put the control into more people. If you're
Hmm.
on a marketing team now, you can create clips rather than needing to kind of wait until your video editor is able to get to it. So yeah,
Exactly.
it opens it up to more people.
I love that. I love that. And, I have to add into, so, of course, use case for this podcast episode, I mean, it would be for podcasting, right? But in
Mhm.
my own, I'll just give you an example. In my own work, I do voiceover work for a client and I was recording a whole bunch of it. I did everything in Riverside FM and then I had to do one of them in Zoom. I don't know what was going on. Something was happening with my mic. I don't know what it, honestly, I think it had to do with just be like a pure laziness of like, oh, I don't want to open it. Like I already have Zoom open. Let me just record it. The quality was significantly less in
Oh,
Zoom.
wow.
It
Good
really
to
was like
know.
I could, right? Let me just plug that there for you. But it was like a noticeable difference. And I thought that was really interesting because we don't always take the time to compare the final product. You just kind of get used to what you're doing and you keep going. So Okay, let's talk a little bit about the actual recording tech and setup. So you talked a little bit about the fact that using Riverside FM allows you to just come and go and so on and so on. Now, I know you have a couple of different things. I will let you sort of decide what you can share and what you can't, but I know there's different apps that people can use to record. There's different ways you can use your phone to record. Did you want to
Mhm.
talk about some of those?
The main thing that I'll see from people is they're using Riverside to record, and then they're like, why isn't my video quality higher? And that's because if you're using your laptop camera, it's going to max out at 720p. So
Mm.
you could be like, it's like driving I don't know, a great sports car that I don't actually know anything about sports cars, and then driving at 40 miles an hour, you know? That's what
Mm.
I would say. That was my great car analogy. But I'll just say that when I am recording every time, I'm actually using my iPhone. So I don't actually have to like download anything or buy any expensive equipment because we all have up to 4K cameras in our pockets at this point.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so if you're using a Mac computer and an iPhone, you're able to do it via continuity camera, which is Apple's kind of solution for this. And as
Mm.
long as you're on the same Wi-Fi, you can connect your phone via continuity cam. So highly recommend that. My videos just look so much better now. I actually used a Logitech webcam for one of their webinars, and I preferred the iPhone and how it looked. So
Interesting.
yeah, so that's like kind of my secret weapon is using an iPhone. And then with Riverside, what we're doing, so what I just said is that it's a Mac computer and an iPhone, but we want to open up that up to even more people. And with Continuity Cam, I believe it maxes out at 1080p. So
Hmm.
we're actually working on a mobile as a webcam option so that you can scan with any phone to any computer, scan a QR code when you're in your studio, and suddenly you're able to use your phone as a webcam, even if it's not an iPhone. And the reason we're doing
Cool.
that, not just to kind of open that up to more phones, is also because for people with guests, we find a lot of the time that they'll have, like the host will have this crazy, amazing setup, but then it looks kind of crazy compared to the 720p laptop. So what we're trying to do is make it so that even your guests are able to get really high quality video without needing to buy a webcam for one podcast interview that they're doing, right?
I love that.
So
I
yeah,
love that.
that's what I would say is my biggest hack for cameras.
That
And
is
then as
so good.
far as yeah, and as far as microphones, I'm using like a SM7B. I would say that I like the MV7 just as much, and it is a lot cheaper. So if you kind of want to dive into Shure, I love Shure products, so I would recommend that. And then because it's an SM7B, I've got it plugged into a Rodecaster Pro over here.
I love that. I love that. I have the Shure MV7. And when I was buying my mic, so when I started podcasting, I used a Blue Yeti. Did I use
Hmm.
it properly? Definitely not. Does anyone? Probably not. But if you take the time to set up a Blue Yeti, you can actually get it to sound pretty good. That said, I was like, I want something that I can upgrade to. I have a little bit of budget to, buy something. But then I was looking at both of them and I'm like, at the end of the day, I wanted something that sounded good. And I was like, this mic is more than enough. And I'm actually recording this
Hmm.
off of a Logi Stream cam right now. And since you and I have chatted, we've chatted in the past about using your camera and so on. And I literally just need to get like a clip for my laptop so that it can sit up there. But are you using the front of your camera or are you using the back camera?
The back camera, that's key. So the back camera is going to get you higher quality pictures. So even if you take a selfie compared to when you have it kind of flipped on the back, you can notice that the picture quality is a lot different. But
Mm-hmm.
because you're connecting it with Riverside, you can actually just set it up on a tripod and I can still see you on my screen. So it
Mm,
doesn't feel, I used to work in news, it doesn't feel like you're kind of having that awkward looking into a camera, having a conversation without seeing the other person. You can
right.
still see them on your screen, which is key for me.
I love that because this is a question I get from clients often is, well, if I'm looking at my guest, like down at my guest, then I'm not looking in the camera. And it can feel a little awkward because I'm looking right in my camera right now, but I can still see you like in my
Yeah.
peripheral. Is that the same for you?
It's the same for me. And I
Okay.
think that I had a little bit of background on that doing like some news TV
Yeah.
because really you're like like you're in a political like conference. There are a million people around you and you just have to look at the camera like it's your friend and nod and say back to you so and so. So I think that it's actually pretty easy to get used to. And for me it creates less distraction. I like to be able to see
Mm,
you because I like to be able to interact with you and see how you're reacting to things that I'm saying or being able to react to your questions. But it also, I feel like, takes away a little bit of the distraction to just look right into my camera phone sometimes.
100%. I completely agree with you. Someone had asked me once, oh, but don't you feel like disconnected from your guest? And I'm like, well, not really, because you're still there. So I think it just takes a little bit of getting used to sometimes. But then once you've kind of gotten used to it, you're kind of good to go.
Yeah, and with podcasting, I mean, it's great that we have video podcasts, but also a lot of people are listening to it just in their ears. So
Yeah,
you're kind of able to get the same experience as those people while recording a video podcast. So yeah, you can
exactly.
look at it that way too.
I love that. And also, too, if you're recording a podcast and you're doing an audio only podcast, at least being able to see each other on video is so nice because I feel like it adds like a different layer to the conversation because you're actually seeing what the person is reacting to, their face, their emotions, all of that, which you wouldn't typically see if you're only doing audio. So people will say, well, I only want to do an audio only podcast, which you totally can. So if you're recording on the Riverside platform, you don't need to use the video, but I always recommend just to record it just in case because you might actually want those clips even though your podcast is audio only. You might actually just want those clips so that you can do whatever else with them. You can use them to promote because on the content creation side of things, which we can touch on in a second, I don't actually think that there's much effect of using an audiogram anymore.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You don't need to have a video podcast with your audio podcast. But if you're going to be recording anyway, I agree with you. I always recommend just having recording video while you're at it because it's
Mm-hmm.
the same button. So why not just use
Exactly.
video? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, I love this a lot. Let's talk about some of the different features that Riverside FM has,
Mhm.
like the editing feature that has had, let's start there. That has had so many different updates to it in the last little bit. I remember when it
Yes.
first came out, I was like, okay, I was like, I don't actually know how to use this and like how to cut things. But now is it text-based editing?
So it's both.
Okay.
And we have even more updates coming soon. So the cool
Mm.
part about the Riverside editor is you could either do text-based editing, which is like editing a doc, or you can use the timeline. And to be honest, like I'm more of a timeline person, but I
Hmm.
use a mix of both. So you're able to now drop in your intro, your outro, ad breaks, other recordings that you had. You can split up and
That's
move your
cool.
text around. So for example, when I talk about transcript versus timeline, so an example of this is I can highlight part of my timeline, kind of split it out and move it around, like move that clip
Mm,
around. But I can also highlight the text of the transcript, copy it, and paste it somewhere else. It's the same thing. So it kind of depends on if you're more of a transcript doc type of editing person or if you like to see the visual. I'm more visual, but I like that it gives you both. And
mm,
then another cool part of it that I love is that you're able to add animated captions in your own brand colors and a bunch of different types of animations. You can add your branding as a border in the background. There are just a tons of things that you can do to really make it your own. And then
mm.
a kind of wow moment that I always have is you can flip it from 16 by 9 to 9 by 16 to 1 by 1. So you can make your video into a YouTube video, take that same one, make it into a reel without really doing much. You just kind of have to click the layout button and change it up. So
I love
all of the
that.
stuff again is made to be simple, but also make it look as professional as possible.
Are you able to add like B-roll into different parts if you want to, if you're editing for YouTube specifically?
So that I will tease is something that is coming up pretty soon. Excited to talk about that and excited
Love
to
that.
announce that. But yeah, we are going to be coming up with a solution to add B-roll. And an important part of that is that we want to make sure that B-roll is royalty free so that you can feel confident using it wherever you'd like to put it.
Mm,
So that's something that we hope to be rolling out pretty soon. Give you a little preview for having me on.
I love that. Yay, I'm so
Yeah,
excited. That's
we're starting off
amazing.
the marathon right.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I love that. I'm so excited for all of the updates because, one thing that I was thinking about is how ahead of the curve on technology it feels like Riverside FM is because you think that you like want or need something and it's already being worked on. You know what I mean? And we have an episode we're going to talk about building a community around your podcast and also your product. And I feel like this really ties into that. So I don't know, we
For
can talk
sure.
about it a little bit, but I think that goes into it a lot too.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, I agree. We'll talk about it during community too, but a big part of our community is that we want people to feel heard. And it's funny because it's a community of podcasters. So, they're definitely talking and we're definitely listening. So, so yeah, an outspoken group. What we do with Riverside is that we're always meeting. I was so impressed and surprised when I joined Riverside because they'd be like, hop on a call with some users. People would comment on our Instagram And I'd be like, this person looks like they're making really cool content. And they're like, message them and have a meeting. We're constantly meeting with people. Our product team will say, hey, to me, because as a community manager, do you know a few users who are going live a lot? We're trying to
Mm.
enhance our live streaming. So I'll set them up with meetings with a bunch of our users to talk about what they care about when they live stream, because we're
Mm.
really trying to cater the product towards the people that are using it. So that's one, as like actually speaking to users, but we also use a system where it's kind of like Reddit, where you upvote different features. So if somebody,
Cool.
so if somebody requests a feature, let's say that they're like, hey, I want to be able to, something that we recently put out is deleting the ums and ahs, the filler
Hmm.
words. So every time that I see somebody request that, I'll go into that original request and upvote it and say who requested it and where. And that's our
Cool.
way of, that's our way of keeping track, one, of who wants what, and two, of how much demand there is for different features. And sometimes we're already working on it. And then sometimes I'll pass something to the team and they'll be like, wow, that's such a great idea. Let me hop on a call with them so I can learn more about it.
Mm.
So it's
I
really
love
important to
that.
us.
So
Yeah.
that's an internal system that you have.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love that. I love that a lot. That's really smart because I used to work in corporate and there's always ideas. There's always ideas flying around. There's always feedback
Everywhere.
coming and it's right. And it's like, how do we consolidate all of that? And how do we make it so that it actually comes to light instead of being like, yeah, it's coming, or we're going to work on it, or it's going to happen in 5 years, or like, you know what I mean? If you're actually giving a timeline to it, which I love.
Yeah, except I've learned very quickly in a product to never give exact timelines because as community manager, I want to be like, it's coming on June 3rd. And
Right.
then, but the product will kill me.
Of the next year. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Sometime between now and 2025.
No,
Um,
like we're able to give like a pretty good example. I know when things are coming very soon. I know when things are like in the few months type of
yeah.
timeline. We just started working on it. But yeah, I try to give all the community members as close as possible of a date because I never want to say it's coming soon and then you're relying on it for a month and you're like, where is it? Otherwise, I'm
Hmm.
just trying to be as transparent as possible with people.
Exactly, which again, cannot wait to talk about in the community side of this of our series
Yes.
together because you do it so well. Can we talk quickly about the show notes component that
Mm,
Riverside FM has? Like, how does it work? I've actually never used that feature because I'm a production company, so I like run things a little bit differently because not all of my clients record on Riverside FM. Most of them do. So
mhm.
I do a lot of our production work in Descript because that I can take all the files from everywhere people are recording and then have the same process for my team. But so yeah, so we do show notes through Descript's help, but how does it work through Riverside?
So with Riverside, I would well I'd first say that you can actually upload any content into Riverside if you want to utilize the
Hmm.
transcripts or the show notes. So yeah, we added an upload feature where you can take all your files and upload them into there and then be able
Cool.
to edit, transcribe, show notes, everything there. But as far as show notes, what I like to say is that while Zoom's made for recording, Riverside is made for podcasting and video production. So what I mean by that, when I'm saying that, is things like the show notes. So after you're done a recording, it'll take the transcript of your recording and it'll create show notes. And that's not just like the summary, but it'll also give you chapter time codes. It'll also give you keywords that you can put into YouTube, all separated by commas. So it's already formatted for how YouTube
Mm.
works. Sound bites, takeaways, potential titles. And I will say, look out for this feature as we're adding more to it. Could be some social post suggestions or things like that. And then the natural next question is always, okay, but once I edit it, I'm taking things out. The time codes for the chapter titles and everything are going to be different. And the
Mm.
show notes might be different. I might have taken out the entire back half of a recording. We also do show notes based on every one of your edits. So as long as your edit, I believe, is over 5 minutes, once you export it, you get the option to regenerate your show notes so that everything is
Mm.
always accurate to your recording. That and transcripts are two things that you kind of just get on the other side as far as AI that are really helpful for cutting out some of the more tedious parts of the process.
That is so good. And I also will say, from a production point of view, we like to do all of the editing first and get the episode where we want it. And then from
Hmm.
there, we'll create all of the pieces. So if you don't want to go back and have to like duplicate work and whatever, I know sometimes you have to go back and you have to cut something else out of an episode, but I would say get the episode done and good to go first before you go back and, you know what I mean? Before you add so much time to your process by even though it doesn't really sound like a lot of time with Riverside, let's be honest.
Exactly. So yeah, so once you export that video, that edited video, there's an option that says like regenerate show notes. And so you can even skip the first one. You don't have to generate the show notes off of your full
Mm,
recording. But once it exports, you can press generate show notes, and that will be the most accurate reflection of your edited content.
love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Okay. And to wrap this up and to take our marathon home or to the finish line, can we talk about the content creation side of Riverside FM and the features that it has in there for that?
Content creation as far as like the editor, beyond what we
I would say like the social media clips and being able to generate clips and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So first, I would say kind of the shining star is our Magic Clips feature. So what it basically does, and there are different tools that will do this for you that AI will identify the most engaging clips. But with Riverside, you're able to keep it all in that same place.
Hmm.
So what it does is it analyzes your conversation based on the transcript and will put out clips. Sometimes I'll get 10, sometimes I'll get 15, depends on how many clips it identifies and how long your recording is,
Mm,
and gives them all titles. And it's basically prepackaged clips for social media. And what you can do, I use them, some of them are spot on, and some of them I use as a starting point.
yep.
So from there, what's different from other platforms that do this is you can actually edit what is included in that clip. So if you're like,
Mm,
actually, this picked it up a little bit later than I thought it should, I can drag the timeline and start it earlier. And
mm,
then what that does is it creates a border, it creates the animated captions on top of it. You can
love
add
that.
images and things like that, and then just fire it off.
Can you
So
add
that
B-roll to that as well?
so that as well with the B-roll that I was talking about
Mm,
before, that is all included in the editor. It's going to be coming soon. So we hope to roll that
cool.
out soon. But so that B-roll that I mentioned before with full editing is also, all of those tools are available for clip editing as well. It's all the same editor.
Mm, that
Yeah.
is really cool. That is
Yeah.
really cool. Now you take like different parts of, so you had said you use it for, content creation, and some of them are great. And then some of them you just use as a starting point. For those ones that you use as a starting point, can you take part of one clip, part of another one, and add them together?
Yep. Yeah, you can. So you could do that
Mm,
two ways. Either you create two clips and you just put them both together, or you start from that one clip. You can search in the transcript. Let's say that the word I'm looking for is product.
mm-hmm.
I can search product and find the part that I wanted, highlight it, click restore, and suddenly it's part of the clip. What we're trying to do with Riverside is we're giving you all these AI tools to really speed up your workflow, but we also want to make sure that none of the AI that we give you takes away from you having full control. And so that's just
Mm,
really important to us. And especially when it's something that you're creating, creation can be so personal that we want to make sure that you still have that flexibility, that it's not like, hey, here's a clip, you can't do anything to it. It's, hey, here's a clip that could help you, and feel free to make it your own.
I love that. Is there anything else, Kendall, that you think is missing from our conversation today when it comes to the recording, the tech, setup, software, AI tools, all of the above?
I would say that we have a lot more coming soon that
Mm,
I'm excited to share, and to keep an eye out in June for some exciting announcements that we have coming. But what I would also say is that we do offer a free plan to just get started and try it out. So if their interest is piqued from this conversation, they want to see what it's all about, I really recommend trying the free version just to see how you like it, poke around at the features. They're not all going to be accessible to you because of the free version,
yeah.
but you could at least see what's there. And I think that once you see that, you'll see just how exciting the tool is. So I kind of would, I mean, it's funny to say after spending all this time talking about it, but I also would say to let the product speak for itself and try it out for yourself.
I love that. I love that. That's actually how I got hooked in initially. I was like, Riverside. I was like, let me try this for free. And then I instantly upgraded. I was like, oh, I think we're going to need more of this. And also, too, I will say as we sort of wrap up, that you can use it for so many other different things as well. Like I
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
before, right? Like I use it for voiceover work. I filmed my entire online course of how to start and launch a podcast, filmed the entire online course in Riverside FM. I do all my podcast interviews for this show and for Happiness Happens because you can create different studios. And also, I've taken Riverside FM, and I've done actual in studio recording with clients through it as well. Because, so for example, I had a client where she had an in person studio, but then would have some virtual guests. Some guests would come in person, but then some were virtual. And we wanted her to still have her set and still, the whole 9 yards. So I would take my Riverside FM studio and I created a studio for her, right? And then she would have her guests come in through that studio. I would run the audio separately and I would do the video just so they could see each other. And then I would have the guest recording there. They could see each other. And then in post production afterwards, we would mesh everything together. So even if you are, for example, recording in an actual studio, but you have someone who's virtual, it's a really good solution to that, I think.
Exactly. I would also say we've heard so many like fun use cases. For example, I was speaking with somebody that recorded a whole audiobook with it.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't even get into live streaming. There are a ton of people that are using it to live
Mm.
stream. So you can live stream your like webinars and everything from it. And the cool part about doing that is at the end, you get a transcript of your webinar, you get show notes of your webinar, you can chop it up and make it into social posts. So there are some really creative ways to use it beyond podcasting. I mean, I was talking with the documentary filmmaker who, instead of using something like Zoom for like professors that are going to be part of his documentary,
Yeah.
he's been using Riverside and just able to get the files that way.
I love that. And
Yeah.
the other thing too that's really nice is I will add this in. I'm like I feel like I could literally talk about it all day. I'm like trying to wrap up the episode. I'm
Well,
like, but
we've got a bunch more
let me
episodes to
add.
do that.
I know, right? So true. But I will say this as like a final thought, I guess. When you record in Zoom, you have a storage capacity, right? And when you record in Riverside, the files will archive after a certain number of days, which I think is really helpful because you're never going to run out of space. Like you just always have your files. And if you need to go back into something and get something from a year ago, there you go, you have it. Whereas if on Zoom, you have to like delete your files after X amount of time if you want to free up more space. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There's always room for more.
always room for more. I love that. Kendall, thank you so much for joining me on this very first episode together. In our next conversation, we're talking about being a good host and a good guest. And then in our third conversation together, we're going to talk about building a community, which I think is going to be really cool. So before we sign off, can you just let everyone know where to connect? And I will put the link to the Riverside trial in the notes below.
Yeah, so I would say that you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's Kendall Brightman. And then I would also plug that we have a community of, I think, 17,000 at this point, podcasters who are helping each other, supporting each other, and that's on Facebook. It's Conversation Creators by Riverside FM.
Love that.
So maybe we could link to that as well, but you'll see a lot of me there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today on our episode.